right, today, of course, we are talking about a story that I think most of you, on some level at least, know. If you've had any kind of Sunday school background, we're going to be talking about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And the reason, of course, why we picked that story today, if you haven't been with us, I'll kind of fill you in. First week, real quick, it was Daniel and the decision not to defile himself with the royal food. Last week, it was really cool. We were so bitter about the ice and the snow. We really wanted to get together. But God had bigger plans. Last week, we didn't have service in person, but we were able to film the sermon, and we put it on Facebook, and it went live, and we had over 5,000 people watch the sermon. At least click on it. So that was awesome. Yeah. So one quick thing I'll just say to you guys, like if you want to, we're going to be doing it Facebook Live from now on because of that. So I think that's what God wanted us to do, because we hadn't even thought about doing that. And so right now, hey, Facebook crew, like I'm on Facebook right now, apparently. And so if you want to pull out your phone and share it, I'm giving you permission. I know you do it anyway. Some of you are doing it right now. I see you. You have my permission to pull out the phone, jump on Facebook, and share the video, because we had a lot of people that never would have connected to it, but because you shared it on your page, they did. And so thank you for doing that, and you can do that right now. But today, looking at three friends that because of the fact that they were able to worship God together, stand for what is right together, we're going to see they're going to face the king. So let's dive into the scriptures. Proverbs chapter 13, verse 20, our key verse of the day. It says, "Walk with the wise and become wise, for a companion of fools suffers harm." The truth is, many of you in this room, and I say that, I believe that with all my heart, many of you in this room, if you're returning to the same old sin, to the same old habit, to the same old temptation, if you're one of those people that you don't even make resolutions anymore because you know as soon as you make it, you're gonna probably break it, I would dare say to any of you who are like that, it's because you're walking with the wrong crowd. You're running with the wrong crowd. You're spending time with the wrong people, because I said this a couple weeks ago, but I'll say it again. You show me your friends and I'll show you what? Your future. Write that down. There's not a blank for it, but you need to write that down. Show me your friends, and I will show you your future. Because the truth is this: God made you, and God made me. God made all of humanity to not be alone. As a matter of fact, when He made the first man, it did not take long for Adam to figure out, hey, there's no one else like me, and this is not okay. We were created and handcrafted by God to be in fellowship with Him and to be in fellowship with one another. So you got a community, all of you. You've got a crowd, you've got a community, and whatever they're doing, you're going to be drawn into. Now, if they love Jesus, it's going to encourage you to love Jesus. But if they're far from Him, no matter how much you say, I'm going to reach them, I'm going to love them, I'm going to draw them into faith, no matter how much you say that, if you don't be very careful, they're going to draw you into darkness, and they're going to snuff out your light. This is just an opinion. Now, this isn't Bible truth, guys. I want to be clear about that. This is just an opinion that I strongly have. You can be someone's friend, or you can be the light of Jesus to their life, but you can't really be both at the exact same time. And what I mean by that is this: you can go to, those of you who know Christ, and you have people that you love that are far from Christ, you can go and spend time with them in the name of Jesus, and you should do that. But if you go and spend time with them in the name of Jesus, you're not going to be doing what they're doing. You're not going to be speaking how they're speaking. You're not going to be thinking how they're thinking. You're going to be other than them. You get what I'm saying? And all of you, if you don't have a community of faith and strength where you have like minds and like heart and like word and like action, then you're going to stumble into the wrong crowd. And I said this a couple weeks ago. I hate to say it again, but yeah, my mom eloquently, she was a good Southern lady, said, you play in the garbage, you're going to smell like trash. And that's so true with the people that we spend time with. And so today we're going to be talking about the power of choosing to walk with wise people to make wise decisions. Because if you do that, I dare say you can resolve to be closer to Jesus this year than you've ever been. So let's look at this awesome story. It's in the book of Daniel, Daniel chapter 3, verse 1. And let me read a little bit about King Nebuchadnezzar. It says, King Nebuchadnezzar, he made an image of gold, 90 feet high and 9 feet wide, and set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. So I just want to give you a little background. If you weren't with us a couple weeks ago, King Nebuchadnezzar was one of the most powerful kings that ever lived on planet Earth. In his day, he was clearly the most powerful person in the entire world. And this king was a very wicked king. He loved to go in and conquer other nations, and one of the nations that he conquered was the nation of Israel. He went into Jerusalem, he tore down the walls of Jerusalem, he went to the temple, he burned down the temple, he took all the articles out of the temple. He went, he looted, he killed, he did whatever he wanted to do. And then he also kidnapped some of the best and brightest kids of Israel. And he took them back to Babylon and said, look, we're going to train them to be like us, to think like us, to live like us. And then one day we'll send them back into Israel and they can run Israel for us. So it was a very, very smart, strategic plan that he had, but very wicked one. We're going to corrupt the youth of this culture and make them like us. And in a lot of ways, when I read about King Nebuchadnezzar, I see like he's almost like a Satan figure. And I want you to know that though no one has invaded your home and torn down your walls and burned our temple, we live in a culture that is completely opposite against Jesus. Will someone say amen to that? Like when you leave this room, the push of culture is to push you away from God, to push you away from love, to push you away from hope, to convince you that if you just had the next product, to convince you if you just had the next relationship, to convince you if you just had the next job or the next whatever, you'll find fulfillment. And it's a lie, because fulfillment is found only in Jesus and in Him alone. And so King Nebuchadnezzar here, being what he considered himself to be a divine being. And so he decided one day, you know what, if I'm a god, I need to have people worshiping me. And if people are going to worship me, they need to have like some sort of shrine they can worship at. So this king, he decided to have an image of himself built. And it was, the Bible says, it was 9 feet wide and it was 90 feet high. Now, just to give you kind of a sense of scale as to how big this ridiculous statue was, the ceilings here, if you want to look up, guys, you can. The ceilings in here are about 22 feet high. And so in order to imagine how big this statue was, it's like 4 times as big as the ceiling that we're in. So this is a huge, gold, gaudy, ridiculous statue. Every time I read this part of the story, it makes me think of one of my favorite kids movie that's not really a kids movie called Shrek. Anybody seen Shrek? I love the Shrek movies. And I think Shrek is it's a cartoon, but it is not made for children. It's like the humor in it is for adults. And I love Shrek 1 the best. Shrek 1 is my favorite. My daughter Gabby, who's 8 years old, she likes Shrek number 3 because that's the one where the princesses go in and ransack the castle. You know, like Snow White gets all ninja crazy and stuff. She likes that. But I like Shrek number 1. And there's this scene in Shrek number 1 where Shrek and Donkey are going to Lord Farquaad's palace. And they're in the distance and they see Lord Farquaad. If you've never seen the movie, Lord Farquaad is he's littler than me, if that tells you anything. He's a little man with a big ego. And Lord Farquaad, his palace, it's this humongous tower. And so Shrek sees Donkey, he's like, do you think he's compensating for something? It's when I see this, I'm like, do you think, King Nebuchadnezzar is my statue? Anyway, so he had this huge statue. He put it in this empty plain where basically you could see it for miles around. And he said, listen, I want people to worship this image. I want people to bow down to this image. And so he had a very particular method that he wanted to let people know when it was time to worship. Every once in a while, as you were going about your life, King Nebuchadnezzar would command his royal minstrels to start playing music. And whenever you heard music, he had a decree that said, whenever you hear music, the music of the lyre and the zither and the harp and the flute and the cymbals and all these different instruments, he says, you need to stop what you're doing and immediately bow down in the direction of this statue. And so the very first time that this worship service was going on, he had gathered most of the country together on the plain of Dura, and he said, we're going to kind of do a practice run, and we want everybody to bow down. And so just to kind of imagine this empty, wide plain, a sea of people, because he brought everybody in, and all of a sudden the music plays, and everybody starts bowing. Everybody starts bowing. Everybody starts bowing but 3. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And if you wonder why in the world weren't these guys bowing too? Well, they were Israelites, and they had resolved in their heart that the only God they were going to bow to is the true God. The real God. And that God, he's not made with gold. That God, he cannot be crafted with human hands. That God, he made the heavens and he made the earth, and there's nothing that could compare to him. We're not going to bow to any God except for the real God. And they had decided that. As a group, they had decided that together. No matter what, even if everybody else bows down, we are not going to bow down. And so they stood while everyone else bowed. And they got caught. You see, it's great to stand for Jesus, but I want you to know something. This is kind of a freebie. Get on my soapbox for a second. If you stand for Jesus, don't expect it to be easy. I think that's something that us pastors, we do a really bad job at. We tend to want to say to you that if you just love Jesus, then you're always going to have enough money, and everyone's going to love you, and you're always going to get a promotion, and when you go to the mall, you're going to get the best parking spot because God loves you. As we kind of want to present that as the truth, and I wish that it was the truth. But I ain't never get a good parking spot at the mall. I don't know, but it's not true. What Jesus said, what the Son of God said, is that in this world you will have trouble. If you follow me, if you love me, if you know, in this world, you're going to have trouble, but take heart, I've overcome the world. And so these guys, they're standing, and somebody notices that they're standing. They tell the king. And kind of as we go into this story, we're going to see what happens. But let me read for you Daniel 3, 4 and 6, and then we'll jump right into our points. It says, the herald loudly proclaimed, "This is what you're commanded to do, O people of every nation and every language. As soon as you hear the sound of the horn and the flute, the zither, the lyre, the harp, the pipes, and all kinds of music, you got to fall down and worship the image of gold that King Nebuchadnezzar set up. Whoever does not fall down and worship will immediately be thrown into a" what, Ignite Church? A blazing furnace. Now, just so you kind of know what that is, King Nebuchadnezzar had his very own torture pit, and apparently one of the things that he liked to do to people who were standing against him was he liked to burn them. I've often at Ignite, if you're a regular at Ignite, I've talked about King Nero. He was one of the most wicked emperors of the Roman army. He loved to burn people too, and so I did a little research on why would these evil kings like to burn people? And the reason being is that the average human, when they are set on fire, they can burn for 15, 20, even 30 minutes without dying. It's a very painful way to die. Now, most of the time, if a house catches on fire, people die of smoke inhalation. But apparently, there were ways that these kings had learned. We can set people on fire, and they will not suffocate. They will burn to death. It was a horrible way to die. So King Nebuchadnezzar, he had a big pit that he would fill up with flammable things. And when people were rebelling against him, he'd light up the pit, and he'd throw them in there. And he'd watch them run around in the flames, trying to put out the fires that they never could put out. So he was an extremely evil person. So the king had said, bow down or die. And Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego did not bow down. And I think it's because they had resolved in their heart together to stand firm. And guys, I want you to understand this. Praise Jesus. No one, I don't think, is going to threaten to throw you into a fiery pit today if you don't bow down to culture, if you don't bow down to what everybody else is doing. But I do believe with all of my heart that this week, every single one of you are going to have an opportunity to bow down to something contrary to the gospel. And what Satan loves to do is if you don't do this, you will be destroyed. You will be consumed. You're going to lose reputation. You're going to lose opportunity. You're going to lose your man card or your woman card or whatever fictitious card you're supposed to have. You're going to lose something. It's going to be destroyed. And we have to resolve to stand in what we know is right. And I think it's really important that we learn to do it together. So, first point of the day is when we have biblical friendships, which Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego had, we can stand when everyone else kneels. I love the fact that in this story, it wasn't just one of them standing. Now, we don't know where Daniel is in this story. He obviously wasn't there on the plane because it wouldn't have been 3, it would have been 4 standing if he'd been there. But these 3 men decided in their heart, we are not going to do it, and they decided to do it together. And here's what happens to them. Daniel 3:13. It says, Nebuchadnezzar, in a rage and a fury, gave the command to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So they brought the men before the king, and Nebuchadnezzar spoke. And he said to them, look, is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you don't serve my gods or worship the gold image which I've set up? Now, if you're ready at the time you hear the sound of the horn and the flute, the harp, the lyre, the psaltery, and symphony with all kinds of music, look, if you fall down and worship the image I've made, well, good, you cooled in. If you choose to do that, that's fine. But if you do not worship, you will be cast immediately into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. And I love this, y'all, this is important. And who is the God that will deliver you from my hands? I kind of almost feel like in that last sentence, it wasn't Nebuchadnezzar speaking, it was Satan speaking. Like, what God is going to save you then? As a matter of fact, guys, turn to your neighbor and say, what God is going to save you? For real. Ask, what God's going to save you? Because I think some of you in this room, you came in with some other gods. And I'm not trying to be too funny, and I'm also not trying to be a jerk. But some of you in this room, I love you to death. That's why I say it. Otherwise, we can talk about happy things. Some of you walked in convinced in your heart that if you have enough zeros in your bank account, somehow that's going to save you. Forgetting that in an instant, all those zeros can be total zeros. And I want to say amen to that. In an instant. Some of you come in feeling, man, like my physical abilities and my health somehow, because we got some powerful men and some powerful women here. Like, I can say no. In an instant, your health can be taken away from you. Many of you in this room, man, we have wonderful families and beautiful children, and you're convinced that somehow because of that is a source of blessing, that is a source of strength. And in an instant, it can be taken from of you. We have some pretty important people in this room. Not to go too Ron Burgundy on you, but some of you are a pretty big deal, you know? Like, yeah, some of you get that. If you don't get it, it's okay. But some of you are a pretty big deal. But I'm telling you, your career and your position and your titles, in an instant, they can be taken from you. And we need to understand who is the God we're relying on? Because I think every person in this room, if you're honest with yourself, there are things that you're kneeling to that you know you should stand up to. So what I want you to do, guys, for just one second, consider, is there anything in my life that I kneel down to because it's convenient, because it seems easy, because I think it's going to benefit me? I know, man, according to God's heart, I should stand to. And I just want you to write that thing down. No one is looking. We're not going to put it on social media. You don't have to turn those in. Between you and God, is there anything in your life that if you are real and honest in your life, you say, you know what, I know I'm kneeling here. I'm compromising here. And I know deep down I should stand strong. I want you to write that thing down. Because, man, there's going to be opportunities for us to kneel. And we have to decide, are we going to do what's easy or are we going to stand, even if we feel like we're standing alone? Mine has been pretty obvious this year. There's a lot of incredible things happening at Ignite. And I'll be very real with you guys. I feel very less than adequate to take our church into its next season. And so God's been working on me hard with a spirit of fear. I've been having a spirit of fear. I've, talking about the building, like, I know it's going to happen. I know that it's God's church. I know that I'm obviously not alone in it. But, like, I've never been in debt $4 million. You know, like, so, like, I'm afraid. Like, what's going to, you know, I have the Satan, he's like, what's going to happen if none of this comes to be the way that it's supposed to be? Even if it does, I'm afraid of that happening. I'm afraid that it's going to go perfect. And we double or triple in size. What are we going to do if all of a sudden, instead of having 1,000 people, we have 3,000 people? No hair. It'll be gone. Like, what are we going to do? How are you going to, like, and like, so Satan's hitting me with all those things. And so I know that, like, that's something that God is encouraging me. Like, my fear is affecting my faith. My fear is affecting my faith. We all have something. And if you can't think of anything to write down, pride, write it down. Like, because I'm telling you, if you're here saying that you've never compromised and that you don't compromise and you're not going to compromise this week, you're lying to yourself. You're lying to yourself. It's so easy when we hear the music of our culture to do what everybody else does and fall to our knees when God's calling us to stand. And when we're with friends, we can stand so much stronger. I really believe that we need people to stand with us so that we don't kneel. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, I believe with all my heart, when they heard the music that first time, when they heard the music and people started falling, I believe these guys, they looked at each other, and when they saw, hey, he's not falling, I'm not, they stood together. I know in my own life, guys, I went to UNC Chapel Hill, which is not the most God-honoring school on the planet. It's a very liberal university, for sure. It was back in the 90s and even more so now. And I've told you guys it was a class I took where the teacher was a strong agnostic and wanted to kind of push us out of Christianity. Like he asked on the first day, if you've never heard this, a guy's named Bart Ehrman, he's brilliant. A couple of Igniters have gone to Chapel Hill and told me about him taking his classes. Like on day one, he said, who's a Christian? Raise your hand. We raised our hands. He said, I want you to know by the end of the semester, I want there to be no hands up. Like he was like that. And I remember when I was in his class, he'd bring out all these logical sounding arguments as to why the Bible can't be real, why it can't be true, why it's full of controversies and compromises and all kinds of crazy. I remember taking that information. You know what I did with it, guys? I ran back to my friends. I was a part of a group called CCF. I don't know if any of you guys have heard of that. They got a great CCF here at ECU as well. We love Fuse, but we love our other brothers and sisters who are part of campus groups. And I would run to my friends at CCF, and we talk about it. And I'm telling you, I would come into those meetings sometimes so full of questions and doubt, and I would leave those meetings so full of faith, because for every challenge to God's word, there's always an answer. Someone say amen to that. Because of my friends, I was able to work through the doubts and the fears. And I think that every single one of us, we need people to stand with us so we don't kneel. Number 2, guys, when we have resolved biblical friendships, they allow us to speak even when everyone else is quiet. Because the truth is, a lot of you in this room, you have somebody that you know they need a word from God in their life. And sometimes that word is a word of challenge. There are some of you, you know, man, someone that you love, they need to know they're in a bad relationship, they're in a bad place financially, they're in a bad sin place. But also, there's a lot of encouragement that people need. There are probably people in your life, they need someone to tell them they love them. They need someone to pray over them. They need someone to bring life and hope and love into their situation. And it's challenging to do that because the moment that with your friends or your family or your neighbors you pull out the God card, it changes your relationship with them. So a lot of times we're just quiet. But I found that the more I let my friends, my brothers and sisters know, the people that God's put on my heart, the easier it is to go in those situations and say what needs to be said. And with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and I love the words they have for the king. So let me just read them to you. This is Daniel 3, verses 16 and 18. Remember, the king's angry, and he's basically said, if you don't worship my God, I'm going to kill you. And look at what they say in response to him. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego reply to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we're thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to what, Ignite Church? Save us. Man, that's so good. If you throw us in that, the God we serve, he'll save us from it. And he will rescue us from your hand, O king. But even if he does not, we want you to know, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold that you have set up. Guys, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they're three for real of my favorite characters biblically because they understand the difference between the truth and the facts. So if you guys want to, some of you might want to write down truth versus facts because sometimes the facts and the truth are not coinciding with one another. It's not like the truth and the facts always equal one another. Because in their situation, here's the truth. Here's the facts. The facts are, the king has said, if you do not worship my God, I'm going to throw you in the fiery furnace. The fact is, the fiery furnace is really, really hot. The fact is, everyone who was ever thrown in the fiery furnace, and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they'd seen people thrown in the fiery furnace. Every person who'd been thrown in there, you know what happened to them? They died. Okay, like the facts are against them. But you know what the truth is? The truth is, our God is bigger than the fire. That our God can rescue us from any disaster. Our God parted the sea for Moses. Our God allowed Israel to conquer the promised land. Our God provided food in the desert every single morning so we never even had to look for anything to eat. Our God is bigger than you, king. He's greater than you, king. And no matter how many soldiers you have or how many pits of fire you have, our God will always trump you. Like that's the truth in your life. Some of you who work, man, the facts are, if you don't cheat, steal, manipulate, compromise, you're never getting a promotion. That's the fact. The truth is, if you honor God in your work, you will be rewarded for honoring him and knowing him. Students, the facts are, if you don't sit at the right table, if you don't say the right thing, if you don't present yourself the right way, if you're not in the right relationships, if you're not doing the right things, you're never going to be with the cool crowd. I don't even know if that's a thing anymore, but I'll say it. There's probably a better word for it. But But the truth is, even if you sit alone at a table because no one else wants to sit with you, if you honor God, you're not alone. Because I believe the angels of heaven are dining with you every single time. And the God of heaven, he will sit down at the table with you. It'd be better to sit with Jesus and nobody else than sit with all the cool kids in your school and miss him at the table. That's the truth. For those of you that are in college, man, the facts are, everyone around you is compromising sexually. Everyone around you are trying drugs, some prescriptions, some other. Everyone around you is doing whatever they have to do to get ahead, to be successful in their own sight and the sight of others. Like the facts are against you following Jesus. But the truth is, you can leave your college years with integrity. You can go through and get a degree and love Jesus. And you can see a lot of people come to faith because you were ECU or PCC or Martin Community College. A lot of people can come to know Jesus because of your life. That's the truth. The truth and the facts sometimes are different things. And when we have people that know the truth, walking with us in the truth, we can stand up to the facts. Like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Jesus said this in Matthew 18:20. There's not like a verse for this, but you can write Matthew 18:20. He said, where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I am what? I'm there. I'm there in the midst of them. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they knew that if they stood together, that God would be with them no matter what. Man, when you have biblical friendships, you can speak when everyone else is quiet. And finally, guys, when you have biblical friendships, you can endure when everyone else gets burned. You can endure while everyone else gets burned. Because here's the reality. We don't face physical blazing furnaces very often in our life. But I think spiritually and emotionally and relationally, they happen in our life all the time. Like, if you're not in a fire pit right now, you're headed towards one. I love you. Like, but it's the truth. Like, life is a series of mountaintops and valleys low. And valleys low are usually full of fire because it hurts to be in the valleys. It's painful to be in the valley. And so we don't have a choice as to whether we're going to be in that pit. We have a choice as to whether we're going to be in the pit alone or with brothers and sisters and with Jesus. So I want to read a little more of this story. So after they kind of tell off the king and say, do whatever you want to do to us, the king says, you know what, I'm going to throw you in the fiery furnace, but just because you insulted me, I'm going to make it 7 times hotter than it normally is. Like, I want to see your bodies eradicate into a puff of ash when we throw it in there. So he gets it so hot that the guys that throw Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego, they bind them up, they tie them up. The guys that throw them in, they die from the heat. So it's very, very hot. And look at what the king experiences in Daniel 3:24. It says, the king, Nebuchadnezzar, he was astonished. And he rose in haste. And he spoke, saying to his counselors, he's like, didn't we cast 3 men bound into the midst of the fire? They answered and said, King, no, true, king. He says, look, I see 4 men, and they're loose, and they're walking around in the midst of the fire. And they're not hurt. And the form of the 4th is like what, Ignite Church? The Son of God. Man, I like, what a perfect picture of what we should experience as a church every single time that we're thrown in life's fiery furnaces. Like the king says, you know, I see something weird going on here. Like, didn't we throw in 3 people? And the people around the king are like, yeah, we did. Have you had too much wine? Like, yeah, we threw in 3 guys tied up. And he's like, well, I see 4 people walking in there. And they're not bound anymore. And the 4th person, he looks like the Son of God. Guys, you're going to be in fiery furnaces in your life. But you don't have to be in them alone. There are people right here in this churches, and there are other people in great other churches all over Greenville. Man, they will walk through the fire with you if you will let them. Here at Ignite, we do that through small groups, and I'm so thankful for my small groups. My wife and I, we're part of 2 small groups, and I wish we could do more, and so does she, but with 4 babies, we just can't do any more than that, you know. But we believe in small groups, and here's why. We've seen miracles happen in small groups. We've seen people for real get healed through small groups. We've seen marriages rescued through people praying through them through small groups. Like, the people in our small groups, every time we do prayer time and the small groups that Jessica and I go to, there's always something going on. And God always passes us through the fire. And I don't play with fire too much, but I know a little bit about fire. Fire, it either burns things up or it makes them stronger. And I really believe that when God allows us to go through these fiery pits, if we're walking with other people, we come through and we endure and we become even stronger. I want you to write this down because it's just the truth. The faith that's tested by fire is a faith that can be trusted. You see, I don't think it was an accident that Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego were thrown in the fire. I think God divinely set the whole thing up so that the nation of Babylon, so that the king who was the greatest king of that time could see that no matter what you do, no matter who you think you are not greater than me. I think in your life, God will let you get thrown in fiery furnaces because he is hoping and praying that when you are cast into the fire, instead of screaming, instead of flailing, instead of dying, you'll stand strong and glorify him. And I think the only way you can do that is if you make sure you're not in the fire alone. You see, we're about to read something kind of neat. And I want you to just think about it. As I read this next part, we're going to read about how that they weren't burned, which is really cool. But there was something that got burned in the fire. The ropes that bound them up were burned in the fire. I think some of you are bound up in something, and God might throw you in a fire. And what he is believing is that if you'll rest in him, you're going to endure, and the thing that's binding you up is going to be burned. And I don't know who I'm speaking that to, but I'm telling you, I feel like there's somebody in this room that right now you're bound up in something, and God says, you know what? I'm going to free you. And he's not going to free you by sending you on an all, expense paid 7-day vacation to Hawaii. Wouldn't that be nice? That's how God yes, free me that way, Lord. No, I'm going to put you through some pain. I'm going to put you through some hurt. I'm going to put you through something that's going to give you an opportunity either to reject me or love me. But if you will love me, and if you will walk with me, you're going to come out of the fire free. This is what is said in Daniel 3:27. It says, they, and that's the king and his men, they saw the fire had not harmed their bodies, nor was a hair on their head singed. Their robes were not scorched, and there wasn't even the smell of fire on them. And then Nebuchadnezzar said, praise to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who sent his angel and rescued his servants. They trusted in him, and they defied the king's command. And they were willing to give up their lives rather than serve or worship any god except their own God. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they had a no matter what kind of faith. And I think the only way that we can have that same kind of faith is if we are walking with other people who know and love and trust Jesus. And so here's a question I want to kind of send you out with as we close our time in prayer and get ready to go out into group link and all those things. If today you were thrown into a fire, be real. Please be real with yourself. No hand raising or anything like that today. If today you were thrown into a fire, would you be in it alone? Or could you honestly say, if I got thrown into a fire, there are brothers and sisters who would jump in the fire with me? I can honestly say that if I was thrown in the fire, Jesus would be waiting in the fire for me. Because, man, if you're alone in the fire, you're going to be consumed. But if you have the Son of God and other brothers and sisters walking with you in the fire, you're just going to be free. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, that question's been burning.